Every escape begins with a plan. But some plans are so perfect, they're written in history forever. San Francisco Bay, 1962. In the middle of the water sits an island. On that island, a prison. Alcatraz, the Rock, known as the only truly inescapable place on Earth. For 29 years, no one had escaped. 36 attempts, 36 failures. Frank Morris was different. IQ 133, genius level. He had escaped from 3 different prisons before. Alcatraz was just another test for him. June 1960. Frank was placed in D Block, cell 138. On his first night, he knocked on the wall. The sound echoed hollow. This was his ticket out. Old concrete, salty sea air. Years of erosion had done the work for him. He stole a spoon from the cafeteria. Plastic, but it would be enough. That night, in the dark corner of his cell, he gripped the plastic spoon and made his first strike against the wall. The concrete was old, cracked, fragile. In the next cell sat John Anglin, bank robber, smart, calculated, patient. His eyes said everything words couldn't. One cell over was his brother, Clarence. Strong arms, determined posture. The 2 brothers had been planning escapes together for 10 years. This was their last chance. At breakfast in the corridor, they crossed paths. Frank looked at John. John looked at Clarence. No words were spoken, but the message was clear. The team was formed. At midnight, they met in the ventilation shaft. Narrow, dark, damp, but hidden. Far enough that no one could hear. It was time to talk. Frank laid out the plan. They would dig through the walls, enter the ventilation shaft, climb to the roof, slide down a pipe, and reach the ocean. Simple, but deadly. Every night, the same ritual. After the guard passed, they would dig. Every morning, they would cover the holes with cardboard. Slow, but steady progress. They dumped the dirt into the ventilation shaft. No one noticed. 1 centimeter per day seemed small, but in 3 months it would be enough. 3 months later, the holes were big enough for a man to fit through. 30 centimeters in diameter. They could now pass into the ventilation shaft. Phase 1 was complete. Frank made the first crossing. He stretched his arms forward, held his breath, and forced himself through the narrow hole. It was tight, narrow, suffocating, but passable. He reached the ventilation shaft, a vertical tunnel, 3 stories high. Metal pipes ran along the walls. Above, there was a faint blue light. He began to climb, gripping the metal pipes, bracing his feet against the wall. He ascended, every movement calculated, silent, controlled. A fall meant death. He reached the roof. He opened the hatch and stepped outside for the first time. Moonlight hit his face. He felt the cold wind from the bay. Freedom was this close. He visualized the route in his mind. Which pipe they would descend, which angle they would enter the water, which direction they would paddle. Every detail mattered. He returned. He told the others every detail. John and Clarence listened carefully. Now only equipment remained. Fake heads, a raft, life vests. Before we continue, hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss the ending, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. But there was one problem. Guards checked the cells every night. If they found the beds empty, alarms would sound. They needed someone to appear to be sleeping in the beds. They found a solution. They would make fake human heads. They had to look real, feel real, fool the guard in the dark. Difficult, but possible. The material collection operation began. Soap from the dining hall, toilet paper from the bathrooms, glue from the workshop. Everything stolen in small pieces, without anyone noticing. They collected real hair from the barber shop. They picked leftover strands from the floor, hairs from the broom. One by one, the fake heads had to look real. Every night under their beds, they worked. They kneaded the mixture of soap and paper. They shaped it into a skull. They added a neck. Every detail mattered. One mistake could end everything. The first heads took shape. 3 of them. Raw, smooth, not yet painted. Made from soap and paper, but close to reality in form. Now it was time for the details. They added real hair strand by strand. Each strand was embedded into the soap mixture. John added his own hair. Clarence used his brother's. Frank used what he had collected from the barber shop. Stealing paint from the workshop was risky, but necessary. A skin tone close to flesh. A mix of pink, some brown, some white. No one noticed. They painted the heads in thin layers. Skin tone, lip color, eyelid shadows. Every brush stroke made the heads more realistic. They added eyebrow details, fine lines. They painted the eyelids to look closed and sleeping. A touch of color on the lips. The level of realism was increasing. 3 heads stood side by side, painted, with hair, almost real people. In the dark, from 5 meters away, No one could tell the difference. It was flawless. Every night under their beds, they worked. They kneaded the mixture of soap and paper. They shaped it into a skull. They added a neck. Every detail mattered. One mistake could end everything. The guard came. He shined his blue flashlight into the cell. The light swept over the bed. The guard saw the head, made a note, and moved on. They were fooled. The system worked. Now came the raft. To cross the bay, cold water, strong currents, 2 kilometers of open ocean. Without a raft, death was certain. With one, there was a chance. They stole raincoats from the punishment storage. Large, heavy, waterproof. 6 coats, each one a piece of careful planning, the main material for the raft. At night, they sewed the coats. Stolen needle, stolen thread. The seams had to be waterproof. They added contact cement. Every centimeter was tested, checked. They stole an air pump from the workshop, modified from an old accordion, a pump made from salvaged parts. Enough to inflate the raft. It worked in the test. It was ready. The first inflation test. The raft took shape. The raincoat pieces sewn together filled with air. 3-person capacity, solid, waterproof. It was perfect. Waterproof test. They tried it in the sink. It held, no leaks. The seams were perfect. The glue worked. The raft was ready. They made life vests. For extra safety, each man sewed his own vest. Inflatable, lightweight, life-saving. To keep from sinking in the ocean, they made paddles. From wood, simple but functional. 2 paddles to steer in the ocean. Boards stolen from the workshop. Hand-cut, hand-shaped. Every evening they rehearsed. They perfected the timing. Exit from cell, 2 minutes. Tunnel passage, 3 minutes. Climb, 4 minutes. Every second was calculated. They memorized the guard routes. They knew every second. 10 p.m., first check. 10:30 p.m., second check. 11 p.m., final check. After that, clear until morning. The date was set. June 11th, 1962. Monday night, new moon, darkness, minimum visibility in the bay, perfect conditions. The final night arrived. Everything was ready. The fake heads were complete. The raft was complete. The route was set. Now only courage remained. 10 p.m. The final guard check passed. The flashlight swept each cell. He saw the fake heads. Everything normal. He continued. 10:30 p.m. The lights went out. The corridors plunged into darkness. Only emergency lights remained. Faint red light. Movement time was approaching. Movement time. Frank opened his eyes. John took a breath. Clarence was ready. All 3 rose at the same moment. Now it was all or nothing. Frank placed the fake head on his bed, gently, slowly. He pulled the blanket. From a distance, it looked like a real person. Frank placed the fake head on his bed, gently, slowly. He pulled the blanket. From a distance, it looked like a real person, sleeping. Comfortable. They passed through the holes in the walls, one by one. Frank first, then John, finally Clarence. A narrow passage, silent movement. They met in the ventilation shaft. The 3 stood side by side, in the darkness. Silence, only the sound of breathing. They looked up. Freedom was 3 floors above. They climbed upward, 3 floors, silently. Frank in front, John in the middle, Clarence in back, gripping the metal pipes. Slow but determined progress. They reached the roof, one by one. Moonlight struck their faces. Cold wind blew. Free air for the first time. Hope for the first time. They descended using the pipes. Slowly. Controlled. Frank jumped first, then John. Clarence last. Each one careful, silent. They reached the ground. They pulled out the raft. From its hiding place. Carefully. Silently. They readied the pump. Inflation would begin. They operated the pump. The raft began to inflate. Quickly. Clarence was pumping. Frank and John held the corners. Teamwork. Silent coordination. In 5 minutes it was ready. The raft was fully inflated. 3-person capacity. Solid. Waterproof. Now, it was time for the ocean. Final phase was beginning. They pushed it into the water. Silently. The waves were gentle. The raft floated. They maintained balance. All 3 pushed it into the water together. There was no turning back now. All 3 climbed aboard. Frank in front, John in the middle, Clarence in back. They stood balanced. The raft rocked slightly but held. They had done it. They began to paddle. John and Clarence were rowing. Frank was steering. Rhythmic movement. Harmonious tempo. They were moving away from the island. The current was strong. The waves grew. But they continued. They kept paddling. There was no luxury to stop. The opposite shore was the target. Alcatraz gradually receded, disappeared into the darkness. Its lights went out. It was left behind them. Now there was only open ocean, uncertainty, hope. Did they reach the shore? Did they survive? No one knows. That night they vanished in the dark. History lost them. The truth remains a secret forever. But one thing is certain. That night, 3 men escaped from Alcatraz, and they were never seen again. The legend was born. If you made it this far, you're hooked. Smash that like, subscribe for more mysteries, and tell us in the comments, do you think they survived? 7 a.m. The alarm rang. Loudly. Emergency. The guard chief came running. Cells would be checked. Routine morning count. The guard checked the cells. There were heads in the beds. They're sleeping. Everything looked normal, but something was wrong. Too still. He looked closer. Not breathing, not moving. He touched it. Cold, hard. Soap, paper, hair. Fake. Shock. Alarm. Federal agents were called. The bay was searched. Shores were scoured. Helicopters in the air. Boats in the water. Every centimeter was checked. But there was no trace. No bodies were ever found. The case remained open until 2023. 60 years later, no one knows. Maybe they're still alive. Maybe history is hiding them. Maybe freedom found them.